Now, this painting represents black people defending themselves from these wild men who were known as the flagellants in Strasbourg, Germany during the time of the Black Death, the plague. Now, in the history books, right, they're going to tell you that these flagellants, these Christians, these so-called believers in Jesus and God, they slaughtered a whole bunch of Jews all throughout Europe because they thought that they were responsible for the plague. Now, those Jews were actually black people, which is what's represented in this painting, because they were defending themselves from these wild men. That's why they don't want to talk about black people in Europe during the Middle Ages, because we were there, so what happened to us? It's because they slaughtered a good chunk of us all throughout Europe, and when they did that, they got all our information, our wealth, our artifacts, like they got a huge chunk of everything that we had. Right? And then said that, oh, we didn't do anything in history besides slavery. It's like, what the hell, man? These people are liars. And you have to figure out what they're hiding. And this is one of the major things that they're hiding. They slaughtered a whole bunch of us all throughout Europe. And what's fascinating is that these people were crazy. These people, these flagellants, they were the Christians. If you want to know where Christianity starts from, it starts from these people. These people. I'm going to read you the definition of cretin, okay? The definition of cretin: a person afflicted with cretinism. A person considered to be extremely stupid. Now, the Latin version is Christianus. Christian, alluding to the humanity of such people despite their handicaps. Mentally and physically handicapped people. These people were considered to be Christians. Those flagellants, they were considered to be Christian. They were popular during the Black Death, and people started following them. Because I keep on saying that the Catholics and the Protestants, because these people eventually became the Protestants or the Christians, they're totally different people, totally different cultures. Totally different cultures, and this just proves my point. These flagellants became very popular during the Black Death, and they started slaughtering a whole bunch of black people all throughout Europe. And there's a whole bunch of people that joined in this. And then, tried to cover it up. Now I'm going to let you listen to a documentary and you'll hear it for yourself. But black people were there during the Middle Ages in Europe, and they slaughtered us all throughout Europe.
Along the Rhine region of Germany, the faithful decide to take matters into their own hands. They are known as the flagellants. Fanatics who think they can win God's mercy by imitating Christ's bloody passion. Theirs is an extreme measure for an extreme time, and people flock to them in droves.
People looked upon the flagellants as helping to ward off the disease, as perhaps their extraordinary penance might avert God's wrath and take away the plague.
The notion of flagellating oneself might have a particular appeal, a very dramatic method of painful, dramatic method of scourging oneself of the sins in the expectation that you might not be alive tomorrow.
In groups as large as 1,000 men, the flagellants commit themselves to a master for 33 and a half days to mark their Savior's years on earth. Forsaking bath, bed, and sex, they piously march from city to city, performing gruesome masochistic acts before appreciative throngs. In his journals, the French chronicler Jean Divanet writes,
"The penitents scourged themselves with whips of hard-knotted leather with little iron spikes. Some made themselves bleed very badly between the shoulder blades, and some foolish women had clothes ready to catch the blood and smear it on their eyes, saying it was miraculous blood."
Flagellants were suspected by the organized religious establishment. Their coming to a place often created a lot of commotion, and sometimes it was accompanied by even movements against the town authorities or other groups. Religious reform, too.
As the plague progressed, one senses that all the institutions in medieval society, including most notably the church, were shown to be the plague showed them to be as powerless as, they were just like everyone else, as the poorest peasant.
This juggernaut will be hard to stop. The medieval masses are ready for a miracle, and the flagellants seem ready to deliver.
That's what the flagellant processions and the sermons that attended them created. This moment of heightened, messianic, apocalyptic, now is the time expectation.
In 1348, a maelstrom of hate more vicious than even the Black Death itself erupts. Shock gives way to a witch hunt. Someone must be responsible for this catastrophe, and they should pay. In a torrent of hysteria and fear, the crowds target the helpless and innocent in a bloodbath of biblical proportions. The escalating death toll brings out something even worse in people. The extreme violence of the flagellant movement. Their violent self-punishment, complete with the suggestion of holy blood, creates a sensation as they travel through a countryside empty of hope. Their dramatic displays are far more compelling than the ineffectual mutterings of the village priest. The flagellants focus the people's fear and rage on a tangible target, the local church. Believing their bloody sacrifice earns them God's grace, flagellants claim to perform Christ-like miracles.
Some flagellants believed that dead babies or dead children could be revived in their midst. There's also a famous story of a cow talking as a miracle ascribed to the flagellants.
Pope Clement VI knows the flagellants pose a dangerous threat to his authority, but his cardinals urge him not to do anything hasty. They fear an attack on the movement at the peak of its popularity could cause a backlash against the church itself.
There's an interesting dynamic between the popular attitude towards the flagellants and the authorities' attitude towards the flagellants. The authorities tended to take a hostile stance, but the people, on the other hand, seemed to have supported the flagellants, largely because they associated their arrival with a warding off or averting of the plague.
Clement can do nothing to quell the insurgency, and the movement is about to take its ugliest turn.
These processions could be experienced by ordinary people, ordinary Christians, as a totally transformative moral experience that uplifts them and that makes them feel that they have the strength and the energy to make their city or their town a better place, whatever that takes. It may take swearing that you'll never gamble again. It may take throwing the prostitutes out of the city. It may take expelling the Jews or even burning them.
The Jewish merchant flew hundreds of miles, devastated by the plague. But ahead of him waits a greater horror, a bloodbath of epic proportions.
It's human nature, I suppose, to look for a scapegoat in times of crisis. Jews always seem to be the scapegoat, and in the Black Death they were as well.
For the flagellants, it is an easy leap from criticizing the church to attacking the Jews. For to medieval Christians, no one offends God more.
There is a whole history of blood libels against the Jews, a whole history of persecution of the Jews by Christians during the Middle Ages.
Betrayed by his distinctive clothing which marks him as a Jew, Agamet is taken to town officials for questioning. He is not alone, according to 14th century chronicler Jean de Venette.
The infection and the sudden death which it brought were blamed on the Jews, who were said to have poisoned wells and rivers and corrupted the air.
Beutel, den dir der Rabbiner gegeben hat. Was war denn eigentlich im Beutel drin?
Ich habe keinen bekommen.
Lügner! Du hast Schlüssel vergiftet, nicht wahr?
Ich schwöre.
Lügner! Lügner!
After hours of torture, Agamad breaks down. He falsely confesses that a rabbi did give him a pouch filled with venom, which he used to poison the wells.
They were forced to confess that no Jews are innocent. All Jews are guilty. They're all part of this conspiracy. No one can be cleared of these charges.
Devenette reports that confessions like Agamad's fly up and down the Rhine.
Accordingly, the whole world brutally rose against them. And in Jewish communities, many thousands were indiscriminately butchered, slaughtered, and burnt alive by the Christians.
What's poisoning us is the Jew's presence itself. That the Jew's presence is a moral failing. It's our sin to tolerate them, and this is what's bringing this punishment.
As Pope Clement VI pointed out at the time, Jews were dying in equal number to Christians, so it was fantastical to argue that Jews were poisoning people during the Black Death.
The Pope's pleas fall on deaf ears. On St. Valentine's Day, 1349, the citizens of Strasbourg round up as many as 2,000 Jews and burn them at the stake. The atrocity is repeated in more than 15 cities in Germany and Switzerland. The people of Europe have been poisoned, not by some insidious Jewish plot, but by fear, hate, and ignorance. The lethal combination is spinning out of control, even faster than the Black Death. In the winter of 1349, Christians in Germany, France, and Switzerland turn on their Jewish neighbors in a horrific massacre intended to appease an angry God. Originally made up of pious zealots, the flagellants now attract outlaws. They greedily hoard loot stolen from the churches and openly consort with rowdy women.
One gets the sense from some of these stories that in some of these villages, the flagellants were almost treated like rock stars, and that there might be what would be after flagellant parties. The sight of the blood, the stripped down bodies and the sweat and the lean muscular frames and all of that, no doubt aroused many young female peasant hearts. That and the fact that you just had so much emotion loose in that at that moment in time.
It is simply too much. The authorities finally move against them. In October 1349, Pope Clement VI calls for the flagellants to disperse and is roundly ignored.
The church actually has to look to the political means of stopping the flagellants. The flagellants begin to be arrested or they begin to be chased away by military officials.
Like I said, these people became insanely popular during the Black Death. The people that were surrounding them, they flocked to them. The Catholics were like, what are these people about? These people are crazy. There's a pandemic and they're hitting themselves in order to ward off the plague. And blood is splattering everywhere, and they're predicting miracles. They're preaching and basically saying that the Catholic Church doesn't know what they're doing, but the Catholic Church is trying to stop the problem, but they're making it worse. You understand? And then the surrounding people were adoring them. Like, what kind of insanity is this? And then, you know, they started attacking black people. Because black people were in Europe during the Middle Ages, and they just don't want to talk about it. And that's the origin of the racism, because they started attacking us, blaming us for the plague when they are the problem. You understand? And now they don't even want to talk about it, but the evidence is there. Now, in this documentary, they're going to talk, I'm going to let you listen to it. They're going to talk about black people eventually going into Poland, right? Because we're trying to flee from these crazy people, right? They go into Poland, and black people have a history in Poland. Like even now, there's this this particular term called Merzin, right? It means like more, but it's a pejorative term, but it's been around for quite some time. Now, Merzin is derived from Czech borrowing of the German more, M-O-H-R, and derived from Latin morus, M-A-U-R-U-S, similarly to the English word more, M-O-O-R, which refers to black people. So this word was around for such a long time, but eventually became pejorative. So black people do have a history in Poland, but they don't really want you to know that. They want you to make it seem that they came there recently. But no, we were in Europe for quite some time. For centuries upon centuries upon centuries. We were living amongst the Caucasians. They backstabbed us, and then they took over. Okay? They specifically tell in the history, because the Black Madonna is the original. The Black Madonna and Child, that's the original. All of a sudden, when the Protestant Reformation came in, they started changing things and put it into white, creating their images, their statues, and everything like that. So, and they specifically tell you that they took the information from the Catholics and translated into their language, into the common language. Okay, because we were trying to help them, and they backstabbed us and took over, and then said that black people didn't do anything in history. Like, what the hell is this? You understand? So they're going to tell you about black people that were actually in in Poland, and they were trying to flee from these crazy people.
Even with the flagellant movement broken, much of Europe remains violently hostile to the sadly diminished Jewish community. The survivors become refugees, searching for a safe haven.
In most of Europe, France, England, large parts, many German cities, had no Jews by the end of the 14th century. They'd expelled them or killed them. But in some places, Jews were being given greater protection by monarchs and invited to settle. And one of those places is Poland.
In 1349, Poland is ruled by King Casimir the Great.
The legends are that he fell in love with a Jewish woman called Esther. And it was out of love for her that he issued this bull of protection to the Jews of Poland and invited more Jews into Poland.
So you hear how crazy and fanatical these people were? I'm telling you, there were two different people. The Catholics and the Christians, there were two different people. The Protestants and the Catholics, two different people. All of a sudden, the Black Madonna, all of a sudden it becomes white. And they start changing the images, changing things in their image, and then the Protestant Reformation, and then they just take off from there. And then say that, oh, black people didn't do anything in history, don't worry about it. And I challenge you to ask your history teacher, ask anybody, hey, what's the origin of this attitude towards black people? Where does it come from? Well, I'm telling you exactly where it comes from. It comes from the Black Death. And the Black Death is the reason why slavery slowly disintegrated, because a whole bunch of people were dying, obviously. They needed workers, so it didn't matter where you were, because before that, there was feudalism. You were tied to the land. You couldn't just go anywhere. You were tied to the land. Now, they needed workers. It doesn't matter where you are. You could go here, you could go there to work, you could go over there to work, over there, over there, over there. And yes, they loved that, freedom. Now, it wasn't easy to get rid of slavery immediately. Obviously, it took some time. But notice that when white people had the chance to get rid of slavery, they got rid of it. It's because it wasn't their culture. It was black people's culture. Do you understand? They took over from us and then said that, oh, we didn't do anything in history. And they say we were about slavery. Well, yes, it was our system, but don't think that we were subservient to white people. That wasn't the case. You understand? And we tried to help white people, and they backstabbed us and then took over and said that we didn't do anything in history. You understand? All of a sudden, you have this attitude towards black people. There was this attitude towards women. Women could only do certain things. Women were scientists. They were doctors. They were healing the sick. They were delivering babies. They were doctors. All of a sudden, they couldn't do that. After the Protestant Reformation, they couldn't do that. They had to like take care of the kids and listen to their husband, and that's it. You know, they couldn't be doctors or anything that's intellectual. They just couldn't do that. But it wasn't a problem before. Gay people, it wasn't a problem before. Black people, it wasn't a problem before. But once these people started taking over, it was all a problem. Even socialism, a problem. And you see what's happening now? Black people are rising up. Women are rising up. Gay people are rising up. And socialism is rising up. Because it's not a problem. Hey, let's work together to make this world a better place. If you're civilized, that's what we should agree upon, right? But for the longest time, no, they weren't about that. They were about pushing down black people, pushing down women, pushing down gay people, and pushing down socialism. And all that is changing. And what's happening to white power and influence? It's on the decline. It's because their world order was a wolf in sheep's clothing. It was a perverse new world order. So now you know the origin of the attitude towards black people. And it was false. And they know what they did was wrong because they don't want to talk about it.